this guy went down for. And it reminded me of some other things that happened, because who's ultimately enforcing cigarette taxes too? I mean, we had police on there, but who's the agency that's in charge of that nationally? Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives? Is that what it is now? ATFE? Those are the guys behind Waco. And interestingly, those are the guys behind Stonewall riots in New York. Was that the 70s, JD?
It absolutely
yeah, what
was.
were those? What was
it
that?
was actually the it was right on the precipice of the 70s.
Okay, Stonewall Jackson,
1969.
Civil War. That's
No.
Here's what happened. JD's got this one. He looked all this up and he has the story.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Going with the kind of over enforcement of these laws, whatever. There was a place called Stonewall in Greenwich Village in New York City, and there was reports that the business, it was a gay bar, is what it was, and there were some reports that it was selling bootlegged alcohol, whatever. But instead of it being a sort of go on off hours, make sure that the business isn't open and try and resolve the situation, it was just like this Eric Garner thing. I mean, to me at least, they went in, the place was full. It was, and the way that it was handled was just so incredibly poor. The police coming in and the subsequent stuff that happened, it is absolutely ridiculous. And this is all over some alcohol that may or may not have been bootlegged. That's the people,
tax evasion. That was the issue at hand, that they were evading taxes on their alcohol. And they raided the place, and the whole situation devolved into riots in New York over this whole incident.
Absolutely. And it was just, it's insane that these communities, in particular, and this is the thing, is that it wasn't just the Stonewall Inn that was raided. In that time period, it was, a lot of these establishments, these gay bars, were being raided on similarly. I don't know. I'm not a scholar of the event, but it certainly seems like these charges are, it's up to a lot of interpretation.
It was targeted. They were targeted.
Targeting. Absolutely. And the idea that these, that the left, that the LGBT community can be such supporters of the left and have this be the real unifying incident that really caused the gay pride movement to happen. This is something that centralized the forces. This is what got everybody pissed off and everybody together to have that organization come together. That they are trusting the government and that they are pushing the government to be, that they're backers of a strong government, of a big government like that.
You're touching. Yeah, you're touching on the twists and turns of illogic that the left is having to go through right now, because they are the party of huge government and government force, but they're also the party of the cops are bad. How does that even work? How does that even work?
Well, the great thing, Charlie Cook really addressed this. Hang on. Charlie Cook addressed this because he was talking about these two narratives that you have on the left, that you can social engineer and build a society in which you can eradicate things like these problems between communities and cops and that sort of thing, and that the bad guy is a cop and his racism, and it's the only thing in the system that's keeping it from working perfectly. But meanwhile, conservatives think that this is, man has fallen, people have these things, and that probably the best thing to do, if you believe that you have racist cops, and you have people that are involved in persecuting different groups based on who they are, that the thing to do would be to offer those law enforcement officers as little opportunity to interact over infractions and minor crimes as possible with that community. And so it's a very different narrative on two sides. If you believe that people can be perfected and that there's some bad apples, but that mostly people are good and that laws are good and everybody would follow the law if you just got rid of the bad guys, then you're not going to be looking at this as a big government problem as much as a big government opportunity to further social engineer people. But if you're conservative, you're looking at it, well, hey, if there is a systemic problem between law enforcement and communities of color, wouldn't the best thing to do to remove as many opportunities for interaction as possible over little things?
Right. If you're concerned that your cops are arbitrarily arresting people, then let's take a bunch of those laws away, and we'll always and evenly enforce the laws that exist, and we'll get rid of these laws that are used as excuses and tools. We will come up with a simple tax process, and if we're not going to arrest people for having dope, make it legal. So it's not just to decriminalize it, because that means it's still a crime. We're just not going to really look at it as one, but we can sometimes use it against you if we really feel like it. So decriminalizing things is really no solution. Take the law off the books. Make these things legal activities. Make it legal to sell single cigarettes so that he can just be an entrepreneur rather than an entrepreneur lawbreaker.
Isn't it just flat out wrong to tax people more on things we don't want them to do and less on things we do?
Wait, hold on.
The government.
Who's we? Who is we? Who gets to? That's absolutely ridiculous. That's the thing that is mind blowing about this whole situation. Is who is we? Who are these guys sitting in their ivory towers telling us that we can't smoke, that we can't drink, that we can't do any of it? Seriously?
Well, I think the federal government has actually shown itself to be, in one way wiser than the Almighty God, in that they've shown him how to stop certain sins. You simply tax them more.
Well, look at that. Look at that rain tax, cigarette tax, alcohol taxes, all the things, cookie dough, all these things are trying to micromanage about our lives. And this is not at the request of people like me, people like you, people like our audience. It's at the request of people who are in that clerisy, back to that other article, that academia. If they had run out of ways to increase revenues in New York because they're taxing people to death in certain places and other people are moving out and they're just limited in the number of ways they can raise revenue, bam, let's put a new tax. Bam, let's raise this tax. It's all about those people who control those things getting more money to do more programs to control more.
40%. This is something I saw. 40% of the cost of a beer is tax. 40% of your Guinness that you enjoy, 40% of the price that you paid is tax.
And what other percentage is weird regulations on the equipment and the buildings and the step ladders that the employees have to reach up into the vats and look at them? There's a huge regulatory burden on everything that goes beyond the direct taxation.
Well,
and OSHA standards you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, gasoline that you buy, what is it now, 56 cents a gallon, just goes straight to the feds as far as transportation?
Yeah, but ExxonMobil make like 2 cents per gallon, so they're like evil and stuff.
And it's crazy. Because why do we have that? It's just to build the system to continue to perpetuate itself.
Right.
And
We have to starve the beast. That's and that means across the board cuts, and that means sequestration, and that means that everybody's going to hurt, and it means, because government is this way, that they're going to cut our favorite things first.
I mean, it's interesting that the left, mainly because of their environmental radicalism, basically considers gasoline a sin and imposes.
Exactly.
It's a sin tax, just like anything else. They just don't call it that.
Great.
And they redistribute that money to pay for windmills and solar panels and the kinds of energy that our ancestors used, because our ancestors used windmill energy and they used solar power and they used waterfalls and water wheels, and society was slow and stagnated at a particular level until things really started kicking off when we discovered the immense power in whale oil, and then when they discovered coal and oil and gas from fossil fuels, the whales were saved. So actually, the fossil fuel industry saved the whales. But once we got fossil fuels, that's a far more efficient way of converting solar energy into a usable form of energy, and we didn't have to use windmills and the sun to shine on our rain buckets to warm up our water for a warm shower. We had electricity to do that for us, and then we were able to invent health, surgery, hospitals and all that kind of good stuff. But hey, let's go back to windmills. Woohoo!
Why don't we come out with some simple ads simply comparing the amount of tax subsidies that go into the same amount of energy produced with green energy versus fossil fuels? I mean, that's all you need. This much energy here. That one, what was it, like 2011? I forget. But, where for every megawatt hour of energy generated by fossil fuels, we spent 64 cents in subsidies, if you can even call them that. And at the same time, for every megawatt hour of energy generated by green energy, we spent $56.
Yeah, I saw there was an infographic about that recently, I believe.
We need to have that's another side-by-side super simple thing that makes a great ad way better than these other ads I see. Because that's so stark, it's so obvious. It just simply says, look, we can't afford it.
I hope what people are taking away from this discussion, especially around taxes and government control, is that we do need to talk about these things, and we need to use these cases to talk about them to people who don't think about taxes or who roll their eyes when they hear Rand Paul make the connection between cigarette taxes leading to Eric Garner's death. It may not be a direct cause, but it is the system that's built there. And we need to talk about how often these things are intersecting our lives and how we need to stop that by stopping the growth of government, by thinking about every law that we're passing, because eventually it can end up there.
Well, and Rand was right. Rand was right. The actual national conversation we need to have about the Eric Garner case is not a race conversation. It's not a chokehold conversation. It's not even necessarily a police. Oh, okay. There probably should still be a police force conversation, because that to me was a little questionable. We should. I'm cool with us continuing to discuss that, but he was right that we do need to discuss the whole overtaxation restriction on independent business people issue, that because that's where society at large can solve it. It was politically really bad timing and really politically not clever, not smart for him to say it when he did. It was about a week too early to be saying that. So it wasn't a politically clever thing for him to say it then, but he was right.
The essence of it, right. The essence of the argument is that we all need to think very hard when we want to pass a law. There ought to be a law, or there ought to be a tax, or whatever. Are we willing to put the force of the state behind it?